himself as perfectly objective. The core of his belief is that human nature and human society may be improved infinitely, nay, perfected, by the application of the techniques of the physical and biological sciences to the governance of men. Nearly all 19th and 20th century radical movements drew their inspiration in considerable part from this positivistic assumption. Marxism is only one of the more systematic products of this view of life and thought. For the convinced positivist ideologue, traditional religion has become a nuisance and a curse because it impedes the designs of the ideological planner. Science, with a Roman S, should supplant God. The religious teacher would give way to the scientific manager of the new society. This rather vague claim that society ought to be regulated on scientific principles has held an appeal for some physical and biological scientists, and the less such scientists have known of humane letters, history, and political theory, the more enthusiastic they have tended to be for a new order which would sweep away all the errors and follies of mankind by a radical application of scientific theory and method. The high achievements of physical and biological sciences in the 19th century gave powerful reinforcement to advocates of scientism in sociology and politics. Religion, moral tradition, and the complex of established political institutions were irrational and unscientific and subjective, it seemed. Surely the scientists must show the preachers and politicians the way to a better world. End quote. Earlier, the establishment of a new world was likened to a new home. It was observed that a home is a complex interaction of human activity by those who are bound together by right and blood in the midst of such an environment, of a created environment. A civilization is bound together not only by a shared territory, but also by much more than merely location, for the families which make up that civilization share a culture with a common history, defined body of received law, and public and private rights relating to virtually every aspect of life. These public and private rights are informed by other elements of culture, and they in turn reinforce and give expression to the civilization as a whole. In short, civilizational concerns are often preeminent concerns for humanity, and our age's seeming inability to understand this is not a negation of the significance of culture, but a symptom of our current degraded condition. Slide, please. Thus, Chantal del Sol wrote in Icarus Fallen, "For the past 2 centuries, in order to escape from the labyrinth of mediocrity, we have believed ourselves capable of radically transforming man and society. Since Condorcet, the philosophy of progress has promised to eliminate war, disease, and need, and various ideologies have announced a radiant future. We have just come to the realization, because of the revelation of human disasters in Eastern Europe, and in the West through the reappearance of poverty, illiteracy, war, and epidemics, that these hopes were finally in vain. We have fallen back to earth, where we must reappropriate our human condition. But along the way, we have lost the keys of understanding, and we no longer realize this mediocre world, nor do we know its meaning." End quote. The solution to our most pressing problems, then, are not entirely technological. Human civilizations are not engineered. In fact, attempts at social engineering have consistently led to debacle or disaster, with the ruinous ends of such endeavors being proportional to the grandiosity of the theory which propelled such schemes in the first place. Slide, please. The utopian phantasm of engineering a perfect society should have shared the tumble ride with Robespierre in 1794, but the self-deification of his imitators, conscious or otherwise, has continued to the present. In the assessment of Del Sol, civilization cannot be engineered, and the attempt to execute such an endeavor may weaken or even kill the civilization that does, in fact, exist. Actually, Del Sol asserts that we have come to precisely such an end, and I quote, "Western man at the beginning of the 21st century is the descendant of Icarus. He wonders into what world he has fallen. It is as if someone had thrown him into a game without giving him the rules. When he asks around for instructions, he is invariably told that they have been lost. He is amazed that everyone is content to live in a world without meaning and without identity, where no one seems to know either why he lives or why he dies." End quote. Such distant orientation is to be expected for men and women who have become, in essence, uncivilized. Slide, please. Uprooted modern humanity suffers from a disorientation similar to that of a man who, when he asked for a map of Chicago or Calcutta or any other place marked by life in the real world, was handed instead an image of Campanella's City of the Sun. nice and neat and orderly, and would never exist in the real world. Such a place does not and cannot exist, and one will remain lost as long as he attempts to navigate the city of man according to such a design. The succession of such schemes has left behind men and women who have despaired of any order or purpose in life. Having tried to plan their way out and think their way out, they remain lost. They have disavowed either loyalty or relation to the broader community of what was a common people. They will neither acknowledge their ancestors nor provide a fitting inheritance for their descendants in maintaining the continuity of that which must be the permanent things. Thus, confronted with the idea of establishing a new world for generations as yet unborn, they're completely disinterested because they're unconcerned for their contemporaries or for the memory of those who came before. They couldn't care less for what might happen 25 years from now, 50 years from now, 500 years from now. Slide, please. They have, in short, become what Edmund Burke foresaw in 1790 regarding the effects of the deterioration of the bedrock of civilization. And I quote, "But one of the first and most leading principles on which the Commonwealth and the laws are consecrated is lest the temporary possessors and life renters in it, unmindful of what they have received from their ancestors or of what is due to their posterity, should act as if they were the entire masters, that they should not think of it among their rights to cut off the entirety or commit waste on the inheritance by destroying at their pleasure the whole original fabric of their society, hazarding to leave to those who come after them a ruin instead of a habitation, and teaching these successors as little to respect their contrivances as they had themselves respected the institutions of their forefathers. By this unprincipled facility of changing the state as often, as much, and as many ways as there are floating fancies or fashions, the whole chain and continuity of the Commonwealth would be broken. No one generation could link with the other. Men would become little better than the flies of a summer." End quote. Apart from the indispensable elements of civilization, a sharing of culture, common history, laws, and rights, there is the belief, rooted in the history of the origins of any given civilization, that a theophanic event shaped its beginning. Such a perceived theophany establishes the dream of the civilization. Its dream is believed to not originate with men, but with God. The quintessential examples within the context of Western civilization are such theophanies as those presented in the case of Abraham and Moses. Slide, please. Thus we hear concerning Abraham in Genesis 12, "Now the Lord had said to Abram, Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation, I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." The divine command to depart from one land to another is combined with a promise of a blessing not only to the individual, but to a civilization which begins in him. In time, by divine decree, even the patriarch's name is changed from Abram, exalted father, to Abraham, father of multitude, so that in his very name the relationship of Abraham to all who would be descended of his faith was given clear expression. Slide, please. In the case of Moses, his first theophany in the burning bush, in Exodus 3 and 4, is connected to the fulfillment of the earlier revelation to Abraham, so that the call of Abraham and the word given to Moses are joined together in the foundation of a faith linked to migration to a promised place. And later theophanies, such as at the baptism of the Christ, would proclaim that the promise of the place was fulfilled. This is not unique only to one civilization in the sense of the perception of a theophany. Other civilizations point to a divine protection extended to their founders and to the direction of those founders. For example, Plutarch famously relates that a sign of divine favor was manifested in the care of the infants Romulus and Remus, slide please, who were kept alive by a she-wolf and a woodpecker. Everybody forgets about the woodpecker part of that. Somehow the idea of Woody Woodpecker, patron saint of Romans, just doesn't quite make it. But Plutarch says these creatures are esteemed holy to the god Mars. The woodpecker, the Latins still especially worship and honor. Some future lander has to have a woodpecker on the side of it.
What did the woodpecker do? The she-wolf fed them.
The woodpecker, according to Plutarch, also fed them. At the instruction of Mars, went and plucked berries and so forth and carried it to the children. The idea was you had the divine favor of Mars watching over the brothers. In fact, even the location of Rome, so not only the people, but the place was perceived to be a matter of divination, and was thus entrusted to that art. And I quote again from Plutarch, concluding at last to decide the contest by divination from a flight of birds, they landed, if you will, upon the site chosen. Hence it is that the Romans, in their divination from birds, chiefly regard the vulture. Probably not a really good idea to associate with a future Mars colony. Just a hunch. Slide, please. However, there is little point to multiplying such examples because they are extremely widespread. If you'll indulge me one more example, when the colonists first came to Iceland, 870 to 930, the common practice of figuring out where you were to settle was that you would throw the pillars of your home, which were wood and therefore floated, off the side of the ship, and where they drifted ashore was where the gods intended for you to build your farm. Whether you want to attribute that to gods or to tides, the fact does remain that many of those farmsteads from 870 to 930 are still identifiable points in the map to this day. So they were durative. We can keep multiplying examples because they are widespread. Certainly the foundation of the New England colonies were not lacking in assertions of providential care, and such testimonies were regularly linked implicitly or explicitly to those found within the Old and New Testament. The point which is being made here is simply the assertion that for founders of given civilizations and their descendants, a sense of divine establishment gives shape to the resultant people. The place, foundational figures, fundamental traditions, law, and religious beliefs are all interconnected with a perception of divine guidance or divine favor in the establishing of various civilizations. Thus, in answer in part to those who have said to me over the years, well, can't we just make up our own new religion from Mars? It doesn't work that way. No, and it doesn't work that way because theophanic events are precisely viewed as revelatory. In other words, not something you made up for yourself. Yeah, but we want to make people be good to each other. Well, you can't make that up for yourself. Just doesn't work. And we've had several centuries of attempts to do so, and they usually end up in gulags and so forth. The key thing is that each one of these civilizational moments, you have that understanding of a theophanic event. And there's a vital continuity which finds new expression from the old to the new in the new context. The idea is that that which has come before is expanded, purified, adapted to a new context. But there are also elements which are undeniably new and which will be of profound significance for succeeding generations. Regardless of whether one would believe such accounts or not, it seems clear that many of the founders of various civilizations therefore did believe them, and attempts to artificially establish such foundational myths have utterly failed. Slide, please. Auguste Comte's positivism, as well as the myths of Lenin, Stalin, Hitler, all represent readily perceived perversions of the foundational myth. Love that image. Being readily recognized as contrived, their appeal was short-lived, albeit horrifically dangerous during the duration. Indeed, the appeal of such cults of personality in the modern age may have arisen precisely because of the modern disconnection from the received cultures of past generations. Slide, please. Being uprooted, the children of modernity have flailed around looking for a past which they might contrive for themselves so that they could have some sense of identity. They are lacking a theophanic event to which they perceive a relation by blood or tradition or doctrine. It is thus the children of modernity have, in essence, raised up idols, and the sacrifices which were often made to such idols have been terrible, and reached their worst precisely when the objects of idolatry proclaimed that there was no authority higher than man. It is thus, as St. Paul writes in the first chapter of Romans, the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of men who suppress the truth by their wickedness, since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them.